for having me. I have a feeling this is going to be a good one. You got my last name right. That's a rarity.
Yeah, yeah, but I wasn't sure about it though. I wasn't sure. Uh, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Can you tell people a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, so I've been a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I've been practicing for 23, almost 24 years now. I've always had an interest in health and medicine, and through a course of events that I don't think I had too much control over, I ended up becoming an acupuncturist, which has just been an amazing ride for me. I never, you think when you grow up, here's what I'm going to be, and no one ever told me this was a career path. And through, I just kind of stumbled into it. It was such a great thing, and it's really enriched every part of my life. I know a lot of people don't get to do what they want to do, or they don't necessarily end up where they're supposed to be, right? They might be really good at what they do and hate it. And they might be horrible at what they do, but they're making money. And fortunately, I believe the Japanese word is ikigai, which is like your purpose, what you're good at, what you're passionate about. That Venn diagram where it all kind of comes together. And God, it sounds like I'm bragging there, but I feel like I'm pretty good at this after almost a quarter of a century.
Yeah, I think people as well. If you're really interested in something, you get good at it because you have the passion for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really to be able to help somebody and to be able to have both modern research and ancient classical texts that are getting translated. There's never a lack of something to learn or something new or something interesting, and then to be able to apply that clinically to patients is it's a blessing, if I'm going to use that term.
Yeah, I've had acupuncture myself, and actually, it was. I mean, I had it for pain relief. I've got issue with my back, so I did my
Yeah.
L4, L5 discs in my back, and I get flare ups with it every now and again. I have to like kind of manage it because it's not something that
Yeah.
necessarily goes away. Um, but acupuncture did actually really help me with that pain control, and I was in a difficult spot when I had it, and it really eased it. I had to have a
Yeah.
few sessions, but it really did ease it off, and I was quite surprised actually.
I forget the acronym and I don't know the name, but I remember like some British health council was saying like, you know, we're recommending this over drugs now. Acupuncture, rehabilitative exercises, I think even chiropractic might have been on that list, and that's just been in the last few years. And I think a lot of people when they look at East Asian medicine, it wrongly got lumped with like new age practices, right? Because we talk about energy, right? We use this word chi, and then everybody kind of, their eyes glazes over and go, "Oh God, you're going to be, playing, chimes and burning incense." And yeah, there's some of that classically because this goes back thousands of years, and it was traditionally done by monks and priests, and that was its roots. Um, but I'm, here in the States, I often refer to the studies that are on the Cochrane database or on PubMed, and we have more systematic reviews than physical therapy and chiropractic put together. So, to say we're not evidence based, to say we don't have science behind what we do is kind of discrediting it and kind of, I think a little biased. Oh, it came from Asia. It can't be as good quality as what Western medicine is. And when we look at things like standard of care studies, we often outperform that, ibuprofen you might be taking or acetaminophen you might be taking for pain or neurological conditions. We can really help with things like diabetic neuropathy. Yeah, there's all these different avenues because we're a whole body medicine, right? So it's yes, we understand that your back is hurting, but who is Aaron as a whole person? How do they think? How do they run? How do we address all of that and then work on the symptoms? And I think symptom driven medicine is kind of what we have in the West. If I can mask it or I can turn it off, then it's not an issue. But in a lot of these more holistic practices, the idea is, well, what's going on that's causing that? What's that underlying cause? And now we're starting to see functional medicine coming into its own, which is basically based on the principles of East Asian medicine, which is what is the source of that disease and how do we go back there to fix it?
Yeah, I think it's we need to appreciate that we're one whole organism, right? We can't
Yeah.
separate and go, "Oh, it's just your back. It's just this. It's just," because it's all interconnected. You can't separate it out, really.
Yeah, yeah, and even just back pain, right? Even your back pain is going to be different than somebody else's, right? Why? Well, yours may not be from sitting in a chair all day or driving a bus or lifting garbage cans. It could have been from, hey, look, I hurt myself at the gym, or I've got this genetic structural issue. And when you start teasing it out to that, everyone, when we do studies, we want the largest group possible. And we want to say, oh, this is safe for 75% of the population. And we know that this therapy is going to be that effective. But when it comes to you, if you're part of that 25 that doesn't get results, or worse, gets a bad result, what do you care if 75% of the population got results with it? So in these kind of medicines, even though we have all these studies, we're also really focused on individualizing those treatments for that person that's in front of us. So yeah, we might do some same points because we're working on your low back. But you might get something that's a little bit different just to address who you are as a person. And and that's really even when we talk about like concierge doctors here, right, in the states, people are paying a ton of money above and beyond their private insurance, which we don't need to rip that apart today. But within that, they're getting this one-on-one, and they're talking to the doctor in a way that I think medicine should be practiced. Now the problem is it's not accessible for everyone because this can be thousands of dollars somebody's shelling out a year just to have the cell phone of an MD. Um, but to be able to go, "Hey, look, I'm concerned about this. What else do we have?" is a question that is not often afforded to a patient in regular Western practice. So East Asian medicine, I'm going to talk to you about your family relationships if they're relevant. I'm going to talk to you about things like your bowel movements if they're relevant. And I'm going to talk to you about your emotional well-being, even if you're like, hey, I'm all right. Okay, well, that might be true, but sometimes when we see these problems, there's X, Y, and Z, and they're under the surface. Um, we don't necessarily go poking where we're not invited. But within that, the goal is to figure out every aspect of how you are and how you work to get you the best results.
Yeah, I think that is something that's missed in modern medicine, and the healthcare system's different in the UK than it is to the US, where we have the health service, so it's all kind of government funded. It's paid by taxes essentially.
Yeah.
Um, you can still go down a private route, but then obviously it costs you money, and essentially you're paying to have the same doctors. Really,
Yeah.
you're just speeding up the process because they all work for both sides. But it's yeah, I think we do just treat symptoms all the time, and it's one of the reasons I refuse to take painkillers
Mhm.
because if like everybody's like, "Oh, take painkillers," but all it's doing is masking it. It's
Yeah.
not actually. And then I'm gonna, in my head, I'm gonna make it worse because then I'm gonna behave like it's okay when it's not.
Yeah. And possibly injure yourself more, and certainly masking stuff. Look, if you got to get through something, and this is a look, I have to do this. I know I shouldn't. Yes, take the painkillers, but pain is just another signal that your body isn't running the way it should. Now, eh, I wish there was a method. I wish there was a way that we could guarantee somebody could be pain free. We can't, but we can certainly help people improve across the board wherever they're at. You can still have some healing potential. You still have some ability to get some relief. And hopefully one day we'll figure it out how to flip that master switch and reset all diseases. But they all have different sources, and we have to respect that. And like I was saying before, even people with the same condition, how it affects their lives, how severe it is, what was the underlying cause, how do you undo it, isn't always the same. So we need to respect that. And in that case, look at people as an individual. Once they're already, in the system getting treated, it's about them. It's not about the thousands of people that did that study that said this was good or bad.
Yeah. If I came to you with my back, for instance, what's the
Yeah.
first thing you would kind of approach, Tom?
Well, so first of all, and this is funny. I say this expression a lot when I'm lecturing to other acupuncturists, and even when I'm lecturing to other healthcare workers. We have this statement: "Don't spank your crying baby." So your low back is screaming already, right? It's the area that's in pain. So what we're going to do is I'll probably run my hand over to say, "Hey, is it here?" So you know that I know we're talking about the right area, right? Because sometimes you might say something and I might misinterpret it, or I might ask you a question. You go, "I don't know what the hell he's asking me," and then you'll give me an answer that you think is, I guess that's what he said, but it may not be what I was looking for, right? We accidentally miscommunicate. But if I put my hand there and you go, ow, yeah, that's exactly it. Both of us, boom. There's no language barrier, there's no misunderstanding. I pressed there, he said, ow. But we're probably going to have you lay down. We're going to do our long intake. You're going to be like, why is he asking me about like a high point of energy of the day? Why is he asking me about, it makes sense to ask you questions like what makes it better? What makes it worse? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it stretching? Is it exercise? Is it better when you're sitting down, laying down? Those kind of questions make sense. But when we start asking about like what's the high point of the day for you? What's the low point of the day? Is there an emotion you tend to feel most of the time? We have 12 channels all over the body and over thousands of years of observation and recording those, talking points. We developed this long system. So we want to figure out which one of those channels is the most out of balance. Now, when somebody's coming in with low back pain, there's a couple of channels that run down the low back, and it's normally a combination of those two. But who you are as a whole person, well, maybe you got digestive issues, maybe you overthink too much, maybe you have a hard time settling down at night because your mind is racing. Well, that's all gonna affect you and your back because you're not gonna give yourself that proper time to rest. You're not gonna be able to relax enough to get that deep sleep that's restorative. So we wanna take that into consideration. Our diagnostic methods, there's a whole bunch of different systems after the questioning, which is palpation, right? We're gonna go press on acupuncture points that are related to what you said. You're gonna let us know, "Ow, that hurts, that feels good with pressure," or we're gonna have feedback that way. We're also going to take your pulses, and we take pulses not so much for a rate, right? We want to know if it feels fast or slow, but we have three positions like frets on a guitar. So we put our hand on your wrist, on your radial pulse, and we take an upper pulse, which is one, two, three positions, almost like harmonics, like I'm touching that guitar string, I'm not pressing down. And then we take deeper ones where we're actually pressing down. So there's six positions on one side, six positions on the other. We have 12 channels, and one position maps out to each one of those 12 channels. And what we're looking for is a relative strength and weakness in those. And that'll say, okay, this is a little bit more root who Aaron is as a person. And we're going to go there first to help build that up. We also might palpate the abdomen or look at the tongue, which is mapped out in different areas that correspond to those 12 channels as well. So it's a pretty thorough intake. It's funny, the longer we do it, the shorter it gets. So I'm saying time wise, the longer we're practicing, the quicker we get there. So my intake might only take 10 minutes or so after you fill out our lengthy questionnaire because I don't have to have the conversation with you because I can look at what you wrote down for sleep and mood and energy levels and all, typical diet and foods you crave. And I don't have to sit there and do that. So the other thing is there's a ton of different acupuncture systems. There's a ton of different practices in the whole of East Asian medicine. All of them are valid, and we all kind of figure out where we want to do based on what we enjoy doing and who our teachers were and our personal thoughts on how the body works. So there's another expression in China: 10 acupuncturists, 10 treatments. So you see me, and it might be very different from the other acupuncturist down the street. And that's not a bad thing. That is, patients have the ability to find somebody that they resonate with and that they like the style of. So the Japanese systems I use tend to do things in stages, and part of that is playing with a very Western physiological response that we know that happens with acupuncture, and that is regulating the autonomic nervous system. I'm sure you've talked to a bunch of people in the healthcare field where it's all about, the vagus nerve or fight or flight versus rest and digest. Um, but acupuncture, after about 10 or 15 minutes, tends to drop you into that rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system, right? So all your blood vessels open up, you're getting better circulation. You're removing metabolic waste from the tissue by increasing that circulation, but you're also bringing in more oxygen, more nutrients. So you have this ability to start healing, right? And then another effect of the acupuncture needles is this artificial splinter, is what it's called in Japan. I put a needle in, your body has a response. Oh, that shouldn't be there. Well, when we put them down your legs for your low back, your body has to get blood down there. So it opens up all those blood vessels in the low back to send fresh blood down the legs. Well, guess what it's doing? It's bathing the low back in fresh blood. And then we can do something locally. Oh, we have these little indurations, these little muscle knots, these trigger points, whatever you want to call them. We put that needle there, and then, well, fresh blood goes there. The muscle goes, wow, we're infused with fresh blood. We have nutrients. This needle is kind of pushing the tissue apart. We're going to relax. And that's how we kind of get pain relief, but that resonates into internal organs as well. So we can help with digestive disorders. We can stimulate nerve function. So we're a whole system of medicine that works by playing with human physiology, which is pretty cool, right? We don't have to add something to the mix, right? You're not going to get a list of drugs. Now we do give Chinese herbs alongside when they're appropriate. And sometimes we go, oh, look, you're on 12 medications. I'm not dumping an herbal formula on top of this. There's no reason. Your body's already confused, but if we can do things naturally and stimulate proper function and production, we don't have as many side effects, which is kind of the ideal medicine, is only going to help and not cause any problems.
Yeah, we're quick to medicate, aren't we? In the West, we use medication for everything. Whatever you go to the doctor for, even if it's something minor, they throw in some sort of medication at you.
Well, it's almost like, and it's a hard chicken or egg situation where it's like, did we rush to the doctor at those first sniffles or at that first, hey, this hurts? And the doctor's going, well, we could wait and see, but this patient really wants something. Or, yeah, so they're going to write you a script. Even when somebody has a viral infection, we're still overprescribing antibiotics. And it's like, well, it's a virus, not a bacteria. Antibiotics treat bacteria. So why are you giving me this? Oh, I don't know. It helps sometimes. Well, how much? And is it doing more damage? Is it killing good bacteria in your body? Is it making, uh, you know, antibiotic resistant bacteria, right? We see this pop up now. Some of our medicines are not working to kill bacteria anymore. Oh, what do we have to do? Well, we have to try different medicines. Okay, those are bigger and stronger and have more side effects. So, it's an interesting thing that, like, if we kind of prompt the body to take care of itself a little bit better, its immune system function goes up, or it regulates better, right? So we can help with immune disorders too. And normally we want to calm that response down. But when we need to rev it up, we can do that with acupuncture. We have plenty of Western studies to show that we're doing that.
Yeah, and how many people do you think actually kind of want to go and get medicated because they think it's a quick fix? Because we live in that kind of world now, don't we? Where it's
Yeah.
instant gratification as well. So like, I'll get a tablet. Maybe part of that is placebo effect. I've got these
Mhm.
tablets; they're gonna make me better. And the offshoot of that is they don't have to do anything themselves. There's no effort involved for them.
It's hopefully that's changing, and I'm seeing that happen with, like, as I get older, my population in my clinic gets younger. Um, but it's probably because there aren't as many people on the other side of my age. But within that, we're starting to see a shift where people don't want to over medicate. And I don't know if that was the pandemic. I don't know exactly what was driven that. It's definitely happened in the last, 4 to 5 years, where people are realizing that And some of it may be a distrust in the medical system. Some of it may be a distrust in pharmaceutical companies. And in the states, insurance companies for sure. But I think some of it is realizing that, like, hey, we're animals. I mean, we're like primates. We're advanced, but we've removed ourselves so much, right? It's amazing that you and I can have this conversation right now, live, right? Across a giant body of water. But on the same token, are we going to go outside and get sun today? Are we going to go move our bodies in a way that, like, we did before we had to do jobs? And are we going to put our feet on the ground? Are we going to eat things that are seasonally available in amounts that are sane? Or am I gonna get the biggest sandwich I can afford to buy and stuff myself after this? So we're doing all these things that have removed us from the natural things that we are, right? We're destroying the environment, all of those things. And this is not a soapbox moment. This is not me, getting out there and being, a climate change activist. It's saying that we're not in touch with our nature anymore, and we're a natural living thing. And I do feel like there's starting to be that, right? Like, I have my feet on a grounding mat. If you told me that 10 years ago, I'd be like, kind of nonsense is that? Well, have you been outside? When's the last time you walked barefoot on the grass? Huh. Well, our skin is thicker on the bottom of our feet. That was an evolutionary adaptation that we don't take advantage of. Why? We wear shoes all the time. So, it's not about being some hippie. It's about, like, what makes sense. And we see some science on that, but there's no money in that, right? There's science and drugs. Uh, so so is the quality of research as good? Is it as amplified when there is a study on it? No. So you have to look, and I think a lot of people are starting to look now, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of problems with the studies is a lot of them are funded by pharmaceutical companies, right? So,
Yeah.
they're going to push their agenda, aren't they?
Well, it is so funny when we look back classically. We see famous scientists. I forgot who it was. Oh, Planck's constant. Like, let's talk about the speed of light for a second, right? Why not? I'm talking about health, but yeah, when they measured the speed of light, they were getting different numbers, right? Like, how these are physicists, and some of them hid some research because they're like, look, I must be doing this wrong. I'm going to omit all this data. And at one point, they actually said, "No, we're just gonna use this is the speed of light now. They're gonna standardize this." So it's not that they don't even acknowledge the invariability, but when it comes to human beings and taking a medicine, we want to know that, right? So I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I understand the fear. Oh my God, this is so fast. Oh my God, you know, it could be doing this, it could be doing that. Yes, every medication has some inherent risks. When we're dealing with a pandemic, we want to do the best for the most amount of people, knowing that we're going to mess some people up. That's a pretty crazy thing to say, but, like, look, this is the science on this, but it also isn't harmless. Yeah, like, I can see both sides of that argument. Um, but what I don't want is people blatantly denying science either, or denying studies. So it's a weird slippery slope because, yeah, of course the drug company is going to say this is safe and effective and possibly forget some data showing otherwise. But in most cases, I also don't want to be anti-science. I don't want to be anti-facts. It puts you in a weird position as somebody that's considered new age or alternative medicine, because we've had people come in post COVID and go, "Are you vaccinated?" was the first question out of their mouth. And then you're like, "Wait, hold on. Yes, but are you going to walk out of here because I am? Or are you going to walk out of here if I wasn't?" It's like, what does that question mean? And it's that gambit of people, right? I don't know what people are going to say, and all I can do is what I think was the best research. And look, I was taught how to read medical studies. They're not fun. They're not easy reads. and they're often, requiring me to sit there with like four other tabs open so I can look at whatever system they're trying to affect or the method of action because they'll say, "Oh, we did this test," and you're like, "I don't know what that test is." Now, yeah, so when people say they do their own research, that's also a little problematic for me as well. Wow, I sound like a jerk, but
No, no, it's right, isn't it? Ultimately, if you know, I've read some medical studies, and I can understand the more basic ones, but like you say, they're even them are a little bit. If you don't know what you're looking at,
yeah,
it can really throw people off, and people are quick to kind of jump to the conclusion without actually looking at the data as well. So, like, I've read studies, especially to do with like health and fitness, because I did
yeah,
a sports science degree, and a lot of it that the difference in the results could be like 5%. Like, so one study, for example, was fasted cardio versus non-fasted cardio, and
mhm,
there was a 5% difference on average between the ones who did it fasted and the ones who didn't. I'm not saying there was a great study or anything by any means, but in the conclusion, they said that's not significant. But for
yeah.
me, 5% would be significant because that's all I'm looking to lose. So it's all relative as well, isn't it?
It is, and it's funny where I don't know if this happens there, but stateside, we have journals that I can pay and they'll publish whether or not my research is quality. And guess what? Sometimes those journals get picked up by the morning talk show. Why? Oh, that's a compelling headline. But that's not factual. That is not even a good study. We're not even vetting the quality of the study. It's just it makes a good headline. Oh, look at this, eating a whole pizza a day might be good for you. Oh, okay. What size is that pizza? What's on that pizza? How was that pizza made? No, none of that. No, just this is good for you. Right? So we also make these blanket statements about things. And the great thing about Chinese medicine is like it's not binary, right? There's not this good or bad. It's well, this probably isn't better for you than that, right? Everything's on the spectrum there. Well, you can eat that, but you might have this and that happen. But for you, for your constitution, for everything you're telling me, we'd like you to be eating these things, doing these exercises. This is what we found over these thousands of years. And sure enough, we see improvements there, right? It leads to some weird behavior by practitioners. Like a lot of practitioners here, God forbid you put ice in their water. Oh no, that's cold. Or you'll see people wearing scarves year round. Why? Oh, because the wind blows on the back of your neck, and that's how we get sick, right? It's not a valid method of action, but there is some relation to Bell's palsy and some certain things. But sure enough, I can tell acupuncturists here, especially the female practitioners, seem to wear scarves all the time. And I've gotten to the point where I can look at them and go, "Oh, that's another acupuncturist." It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think it's probably difficult, isn't it? If you see sort of, if you do acupuncture and you get success doing it,
Yeah,
then it's easy to go all the way down one route
yeah,
without keeping the balance, if you know what I mean, and just believe everything. We seem to do that as humans for some reason. We're like either all in on something or all out on something. We
yeah,
we
yeah.
never find that balance in between and think, because what we got to look at with these things as well, not only if it works, great, but also, is it practical? Is it practical to wear a scarf 24/7? It's
Yeah.
not, is it really? So let's be honest. Let's balance that risk up and
Yeah,
let's do
yeah.
what
How
we.
about when it's cold out? How about when it's windy? How about
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And it's also where we see this thing where like I never want to present myself as some kind of health guru. And sometimes people get results when they come to us that they haven't been able to get anywhere else. And now they're leaning on me for things that are like well out of my comfort zone. Hey, I was just diagnosed with this type of cancer. Okay, what does the oncologist said? Well, I was hoping you could treat it. Whoa, look, I will support you in this. You can come in for treatment, but you're going to the oncology appointments. You're going to listen. Whether or not you decide to do it, I want you to have all your facts. I want you to have all your options in front of you. This is not a me or them. This is whatever your team needs to look like to get you the results, right? Sometimes that's a personal trainer. Sometimes that's a dietitian or a nutritionist. Sometimes I'm pressing on something. I go, this doesn't feel right. I want you to go see the chiropractic. Well, why? Well, because like I think this bone is a little turned and I'm not the one to shove it back into place. So we got to look at health as a whole team approach too, right? There's too much knowledge across medicine to have anyone, even the smartest people with photographic memories. I know a lot of brilliant, brilliant people in medicine, like hands down, maybe 10 times smarter than me. I don't know, but they don't do everything. Why? It's too big of an animal. So, well, I would listen to who they want to refer you to then. Why? They probably know somebody equally smart. They probably know somebody equally well versed in their particular discipline. And that's where you're going to get the best results. So a multi-team approach is always going to be better than, like one person managing all your care, right? So I'm a big advocate of having people have a team of healthcare providers, especially when they're undergoing something chronic or something autoimmune or debilitating, all these things that could really knock people out. You want them to be able to have a support network, not just, rely on one practitioner.
Yeah, it is important to, right person for the right job, isn't it? And you got to. This is what we've. I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of us have got bad at is thinking that it's one or the other.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, there's nothing wrong with balance. There's nothing wrong with being
No,
in the middle
no.
ground and seeking the best of everything.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really nice to see that at least where my clinic is, down the street there's a chiropractor. There's probably about 4 or 5 nationally ranked hospitals within a few miles. There's like nationally well-known doctors, right? Not every area has that opportunity. But here, I actively encourage patients. Well, I know University of Maryland has some amazing physicians there in the nephrology department. Maybe you should go there. Why? Because you want to have this team approach, because you want the best of all, views at this. And certainly, e- even the Western practitioners have become very favorable of acupuncture when they are clearly dismissive of other techniques like chiropractic sometimes, or like, I don't want you doing that, but no, you can get the acupuncture. Why? I saw a study, which is nice. They're seeing the results. They're hearing it from patients, and 95% of the time, I'm getting the green light from the physician to carry on, which is super positive after starting in a field where they're like, well, do they reuse those needles? Do they did that guy go to school for it? Yeah, yeah. It not only is it a master's degree entry level, it takes 4 years of postgraduate schooling and passing of state and national boards. It's not You don't just get to go, hey, I want to stick needles in people and then do that. So yeah, the training for registered acupuncturists in the UK is also very stringent. I think people are surprised by that. These are not you don't just come out of high school and go, "I wanna do this." Um, and the education is normally most surprising to people because they're like, "Oh, what did that take, a year?" It's like, I'm taking a metal object and putting it into your body. I hope I had more training than that. Like, I would hope you want me to have more training than that?
Yeah, it's the chiropractic in the UK. I don't know what that's like in the US, but that takes, I think that's 4 or 5 years in university,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it's a
college.
doctorate
So
level program. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So there's a lot goes into it. It's not just some random people cracking bones and sticking needles in yourself. Like
And that's what you want. You want well-trained people. So, we can say the government overregulates sometimes, but when it comes to the health of people, I don't know if I want them taking shortcuts. I want the person that's treating me with whatever modality they're treating me with to be the best trained, the best licensed, certified, that we know that they know what they're doing. And at the very least, the risk of harm is very small.
Yeah, and it gives you confidence then as well when you go to see these people, and because when you have them first kind of engagements and you're talking with them as well, and you can kind of know, and just from them conversations that they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really kind of settles you down and calms you into it.
Yeah, uh God, I feel a little bit spoiled, because, over the years, I was able to make a Rolodex of so many. Wow, Rolodex, I dated myself. But, I have contacts in a bunch of different disciplines that are just top of their field, and to be able to lean into them when I need to refer somebody or I have a personal question is really something not everybody gets to have, and it's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, it is nice. It sounds like it's happening for you, and it is nice if it happens more where the referrals are kind of both ways, and they have them kind of conversations, and people are a bit more open to other methods apart from just pharmaceuticals, really.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to see, this year I got to speak to two different colleges, two med students, two groups of med students, about integrative practices, specifically around East Asian medicine. And they, these kids that are now in pharmacology classes, and this is how you treat this, and this is what we give somebody for this and this, are very open to, like, hey, can we do this without giving them another pill? What is the more, in this way, conservative approach where we're not dumping something on them, or we're not making them do some heavy duty therapy, or we're not giving them surgery? So they're open to alternative methods like acupuncture. And it's funny because I don't even want to call it alternative anymore. If you're in China, that medical doctor also knows acupuncture. And if you end up in a hospital and you're triaged for whatever reason you're there, it's not, oh, you're going to get surgery. So we're not doing anything else. It might be, well, you might end up in the surgeon's ward, but we're going to start with this. We're going to do acupuncture. We're going to talk about, some therapeutic exercises. We're going to do Tui Na, which is a body work. I hesitate to call it massage. It's not always pleasant. We're going to do cupping. We're going to do moxibustion. We're going to give you herbal medicine. And that may be right alongside of, here's your Western pharmaceutical. And look, we're going to schedule you for surgery after we get this imaging back. But it allows so many people more options, and that provides better outcomes across the board when you have more options. We know that when we talk about evidence-based medicine or evidence-informed practice, and this is kind of a dry concept, but it's a buzzword in healthcare now. It it's largely, when you hear that, you start thinking about those studies. What are really good studies, right? We want really good studies, but we also want people that have a lot of experience in treating that, right? We want the physician to be well informed, or the practitioner to be well informed. We also want to take into account the patient's beliefs and desires, right? If if somebody's going down a certain route and they say this surgery is the best, but, like, look, this is going to mean that I can't do X, Y, and Z, that patient might be more upset by having something taken away, even if it cures the disease or helps the problem, than the disease itself. And we do need to respect that. Now, if it's going to end up with the patient being dead, I think, you know we should be insistent. But in most cases, if it's like, hey, you're going to limp a little bit more versus we're going to give you a prosthetic leg, well, I'd rather just limp. Like, what is that to the patient? If the patient's like, "Oh, I can't limp. Give me the prosthetic." Well, we know, but that's all evidence-informed practice too, and that evidence is the patient's desires and beliefs. So we often forget about that part of the equation too, is are we doing what the patient really wants? And sometimes it's like, "Look, it's either this or we got nothing for you." But in a lot of cases, there's a lot of room to run when we start looking at things like East Asian medicine and some of the practice that are even around acupuncture, which gives a lot more options these days than people were even aware of, 10 years ago.
Yeah, you mentioned cupping in there as well.
Yeah,
A lot
yeah.
of athletes are using that now, aren't they? It's something I've
Yeah.
never tried.
Yeah,
So
I
tell me a
yeah,
bit about
so
it.
this is funny because I released a book in January on how to do cupping at home, and part of the reason I released it was one, everybody was talking about it, so Michael Phelps is an American swimmer. 2016, he's from Baltimore where I practice. And he had the perfectly circular cupping marks all over his body. And it was funny to me because watching the Olympics 4 years before that, I was looking at the swimmers from Korea and China, and they all had the cupping marks. And I know on that pool deck, every swimmer was like, "What is that on those people? And should I be doing it?" Right. And then, of course, those athletic trainers, those therapists, all those people that were poolside were like, "Oh, I better go learn that." Why? Because the athletes are asking for it. But cupping is it's often assumed that it's Chinese in origin. But truth be told, it's much older. It's about at least 5,000 years old. We know that in Egypt, the Ebers Papyrus, which was discovered, I think, in the 90s or something, but it dates to 1515 BC, talks about cupping. It talks about surgery. It's a medical text in ancient Egypt, and it's actually really advanced. Some of those surgical techniques are almost, if you read it alongside of a Western surgical manual, they look pretty similar. There might be different materials, but the technique is almost the same, which is kind of amazing that thousands of years ago they knew this. But cupping itself involves adhering, creating a vacuum in a jar, or classically it was buffalo horn or clay pots or sections of bamboo. Uh, you would have to use fire then to eat the oxygen and create this vacuum. Then you then stick it to the surface of the skin. What happens is you pull the skin up into the cup. And as you're doing that, it separates the skin from the fascia and the fascia from the muscle, creating a void in that tissue that's deeper, and it pulls blood up to the surface. So you're creating this little like local increase of circulation, which is a little bit of inflammation, but it's pulling the blood that hasn't been circulating, maybe because the tissue is already inflamed, into a void where the body can slowly kind of clean that up. But fresh blood is coming in behind it, right? Once again, fresh blood has nutrients, oxygen, the things the tissue needs to repair itself. Um, it is absolutely great for pain. It is great, and I think in these swimmers' cases where they're all marked up, the athletes, they might be using it for quick lactic acid removal, right? Within a few minutes after a workout, you should be kind of like losing that lactic acid. But if you're swimming a race and then you're back in the water, or you're doing something else, or you're lifting heavy and you got to go back, sometimes that'll help break up that cycle a little bit quicker. But classically, we use it for pain management. We have modern studies to show that it definitively works for neck and shoulder pain. And definitively is a weird way. No scientific journal is going to say this definitely does this. We could say statistically speaking, there's significant results for low back pain and neck and shoulder pain. Classically, we were using it for respiratory health because we can increase circulation up to 6 inches into the body. So if I put, cups on your upper back when you have pneumonia and bronchitis, I can help break up some of that phlegm that's in that lungs. I can help, increase circulation to that, which will also bring, white blood cells and immune system function to that area. So there's a lot of great things that are done just by kind of creating a vacuum and breaking some capillaries on the surface of the skin, which is how we get that perfectly circular bruise. Now, the reason I wrote the book is traditionally we had to use fire and we were using cups that could break. In our clinic, we still do fire cupping with glass cups, but now you make them out of silicone and you can literally press them down, squeeze the air out, it sticks. Or we have little plastic pumps with a one-way valve. So you put a pump on the end of the cup, you pump it, you pull the pump off, and the cup sits there. So there's so many options that have been around in Asia, and you would go to like a grocery store in the health section and get a cupping set. If you have an Asian market near you, you can probably find one there. But because so many athletes and celebrities are showing up with like either their shirt off or a perfectly circular mark on their back, and somebody go, "Oh, what is that?" It's hit that critical mass where people are talking about it again. But one of my favorite things, I taught in Manhattan before I moved down to Maryland, And the school that I was teaching at had a lot of foreign students, a big place for people to come and study. It didn't matter what country they were from, whether it was Russia, whether it was South America, whether it was from some country in Africa. They all would say grandma used to do that. And it's often referred to as grandma's medicine. So we all have this historical attachment to it too, which once again, getting back to that evidence-based medicine, that is the patient desire piece. So we have clinical studies, practitioners like me, acupuncturists have been using it probably from 300 AD. That's when one physician was like, look, we know this is folk medicine, but it's so clinically effective, you should be doing it in your practice. And it kind of got picked up then. uh, but it hits every one of those evidence-based medicine uh, elements. And the other thing is it's really easy. So my whole goal with writing the book was trying to return this to people's hands, right? So I wrote a short manual that's meant to be read by anyone. It's not meant, you don't need a PhD to read this. Quickly understandable and quickly employable. So if you hop on your Amazon, I don't know what it is in British pounds or in euros, but it's not an expensive book. Cupping supplies are very cheap now. And you buy a set that you like. We discuss all of them in that cupping book, and you figure out where you want to go. And hopefully, you have some knowledge and some tools that'll last you a lifetime and allow you to treat yourself and a lot of other people.
Yeah, that's quite. I didn't realize you could do it yourself. To be honest, I always thought because I've
Yeah.
only ever seen it, with the glass cups and the heat, and I was like, oh, I wouldn't
Yeah, that
wouldn't try that.
and leave that to somebody that's a professional that's been trained in that. But I mean, this is one of the great things about living at this time. I mean, certainly it's uneasy over here with an election coming up next week. Um, but with all of that being said, as technology catches up, right, we can go back and look at old practices and not kick them to the curb because they're no longer valid, but find a way to do them safer, faster, more efficiently. Right. So it's going to be hard for you, Aaron, to cup your low back by yourself, right? It's going to require some help. But if you read the book and you go, okay, I want you to put the cups here, you can show somebody within a couple of seconds how to attach whatever cups you get. So it's a great way to get, some another tool in your toolkit that you can use for your own personal health, for the health of your family, the friends, that may need something, so why not do that for people?
Yeah, I'll have to recruit the kids, get them on it.
You know what? Look, I started buying silicone cups when I had kids because they're probably not going to let me come at them with something on fire, and oh, what is that? That's weird. And the silicone cups, I mean, the kids were playing with them. I came home and they were covered in cupping marks, and it was like, well, you're not going to hurt yourself. It's much better than playing with a bottle of prescription medicine. There's no side effects here. But they had, I got two redheaded daughters. Their skin's very fair, so the bruising came up quite quick. But it was funny because I was trying to treat one of them the day before, and she wasn't settling down and letting me do it. She's like, "No, I don't want you to do it." But I left them out. I came home and they treated each other. So not exactly where I would have gone as a practitioner, but at least they got something. Which is, and it's great too because now like something that would be very weird and foreign to them. Yeah, they're growing up in a weird household anyway with what I do, but it's something that they kind of know how to do now years later because they've grown up with it, right? It's part of their tradition, it's part of their heritage, which it was for so many people globally, that I want to return that to them. I mean, now we're saying words like, oh, was this colonized? Was this appropriated? These are conversations we should be having, but I can say cupping went everywhere as a practice thousands of years ago, so we all kind of get some ownership in that. And it's nice to return that back to people and give them something that, their ancestors did, in a safe and modern way.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a lot of popularity in it now, so that helps, doesn't it? Helps the
It
image
definitely
when
does.
soon as athletes are doing anything, anybody involved in sport wants to do it, and then it kind of spreads, doesn't it? To
It
the
it does. Yeah, and even to the point where more practitioners go out and learn it because they're like, well, that guy's getting it. And if I want to keep up with my field, if I want to keep up with the trends in the profession, and we shouldn't do everything based on trends, but if people are coming in and asking for it, if I'm not doing it, they're going to go somewhere else to get it. So it's also engendering new practitioners to do it, which is kind of great.
Yeah, the way it works as well, I find it quite interesting because I think a lot of the stuff that people try now or want to try, so like ice baths and saunas and stuff like that, things that they want to do, a lot of it is just stimulating blood flow. A lot of it.
It's so funny when we have an ice bath, we have cryotherapy, we have sauna, we have red light therapy, we have exercise with oxygen therapy, salt therapy, all alongside of my acupuncture, moxibustion cupping, gua sha, massage, all these traditional old therapies. And somebody's going like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You're an East Asian medicine practitioner. And I go, well, if we look at the physiological changes that happen with most of these services, they're all reducing inflammation, they're all increasing circulation, and they're all helping to regulate the immune system. And at that point, and this is not claiming a cure all or a great panacea or something like that, but I know if I can do that for a patient, it doesn't matter what the disease is, it doesn't matter what they're suffering from, they're going to see some improvement. Now, the trick is to individualize that and get people in the right equipment and make sure they're doing it the right way for those areas that are screaming out. But if we treat people and help them reduce, and we do this with diet, we do this with exercise too. So this is like a multi-therapy approach, but reducing inflammation, increasing circulation will help people feel better. And somebody goes, "Oh God," somebody's trying to give me a compliment. They're, "Oh, you put all these crazy services together." And I'm like, they all kind of do the same. Like, I don't want to bust your bubble, man, but I just looked at things that kind of work the way I think acupuncture works. Yeah, and oh wow, that's still genius to observe that. And it's like, well, look, these converging technologies, these converging theories just kind of naturally lent itself to it. Now, I also see the writing on the wall: ice baths, cold showers, red light panels, saunas. These are not high ticket items. Eventually, you know, I could see people having all of them in their house given the space or, as they come down in price. So it made sense even with the cupping book. It's like, well, then start writing, start talking about these things. So now you're the expert. And when people want to put them in their house, they come to you to talk about, like, well, which should I get? And what am I looking for? And I actually have two patients that come in for acupuncture that they're like, hey, look, we love your membership, but we're going to cancel it because we just bought an ice bath for the house. Well, on one hand, as a business owner, that sucks. I'm losing a little bit of money there. But on another hand, I'm accomplishing my mission, which is to inspire people to take control of their health. So great. How are you using it? And I literally had a conversation with the wife yesterday who came in about how she's using it and the research on it. And it's like, well, I'm still their source for information. I'm still their go-to person here. But now they can do it in the privacy of their own home around their schedule, which is super convenient. And that's what real empowerment is about health.
Yeah, right. Because ultimately, people are and have to be responsible for their own health.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, well, we can't do everything for them. We can guide them. You can, there's treatments you can do, and you can guide them. But say, how often does somebody come in for a treatment? Once a week, maybe,
yeah. About
maybe
once a
longer than that.
week. Yeah, about once a
Yeah.
week is the normal rhythm.
So you're seeing them for once a week, one session a week. That's a real small time period, given
One
the rest of the
hour in a
out once
whole. Yeah,
168.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, so the rest of that time, then 167 hours, you're needing them to look after themselves and
yeah.
to
Exactly.
to manage their own health. So you can help them, but they need to take ownership of their own health.
And this gets even worse when we talk about Western medicine. When do you go to the doctor? Maybe for a checkup every year. Maybe. Yeah, or if
So
something's wrong. So you're on your own. You're flying solo all the rest of that time,
Yeah.
and
In the
go
UK, you only go if there's something wrong. There's no checkups. You don't get checkups. You just go in if something's wrong.
and it's funny because here we have all these screenings, right? And I'm pretty sure you guys have like, oh, you're this old, you need a prostate exam, you're this old, you need a mammogram, those kind of things. But I we don't do preventative medicine well. We're looking for something to be wrong in these systems, right? Like, oh, I found this lump, or this is this. So if people start incorporating these practices as well care, it radically shifts everything, right? Here we're talking about how much we spend on healthcare versus every other civilized country. We can't have the conversation about universal healthcare, but um, we talk about how much more spending we're doing versus how healthy other people are. Like every American, for the amount we spend, we should be the healthiest people on the planet. And I think we're like at the bottom of the list for first world countries. Well, why is that? Well, we're pumping you full of drugs. We're expecting you to just manage sickness and illness, but we're also not empowering our citizens to understand what a healthy life is. We're not teaching them that by sure for sure. And it's a shame because I believe that what we do in our lives resonates out to our community, our friends, and our family, and then that happens at a national level and then at a global level. So if we're sick and unhealthy, guess what? People around us are going to start getting sick and unhealthy. And then we live in a society of sick and unhealthy people that are probably not thinking with their right minds. And wow, I guess we end up here. Um,
Yeah, but it's true. And you look at kids as well, right? Kids they observe and they do what you do. They don't do what you tell them. So if
no,
you're
absolutely
living
not.
that, yeah, and if you're living that kind of life, then that's the kind of life they're gonna live.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
just passes it down to the next generation, next generation. So you have to kind of take ownership of that.
yeah, and small changes in your life now have big impacts down the road. And it's like investing. It's like, oh, look, it's only a couple of bucks, it's not much money, but 20 years from now, is that going to be, am I getting a hip replacement, or am I still able to go out for a run and feel great? That little investment in our health.
Yeah, and it's something that I've looked at as well because as you get older, you do start to look at actually quality of life. So it's all great that we live longer now. We have medical practices that can keep us alive longer and
Mhm.
generally is safer, so we live longer, etc. But what's the point in living an extra 20, 30 years if you're not mobile, if you're not able to enjoy life? Yeah,
Yeah,
to some degree at least.
yeah, it's a conversation I've had with a lot of people because blessed or cursed, my family has some longevity in it. My great grandmother was nearly 106 when she died. All of her kids, minus my grandfather, who had a congenital heart issue, um, were well. I mean, one of them is celebrating his 99th birthday in a couple of weeks. So, all of them, are get longevity, and they were active most of their time, right? Towards the end, things popped up. But if it means being living a long time and being stuck in a wheelchair or stuck to some machines, what's the point? If you can be vibrant, if you can be active, I'm very lucky where I have a couple of patients that are in their 90s, and they still drive to the clinic. They're still spry. One of them's a priest. He gives like five masses a week. It's kind of crazy. It's like, wow, he's 90 and he's still out there. Oh yeah, I go here, I go there, I go do this. He has an active life, and it's because he's relatively healthy. Yeah, he's seeing me for some of the arthritis. He's seeing me for little aches and pains, but he even attributes his long health to his wellness routines, regular chiropractic visits, regular exercise, regular acupuncture, and that's the model that a lot of our practices work better in. Certainly East Asian medicine is better at well care. Yeah, we pull out some miracles when you have nowhere else to turn, but I'd much rather see you at the first sign of anything going wrong, or better yet, before something goes wrong and try to keep it that way.
Yeah, it's a difference between being alive and living, right?
Yeah, yeah, and if we look at how we're spending our time, you might be committing a little bit to exercising. You might be committing a little bit to prepping your own food so you have better quality food. You might be committing a little bit to go get a 2 weeks if you're feeling good. Uh, but how much that may add on to the back end is something that's very hard to quantify, but at the same time, it could be quite a lot. Like I've managed to avoid X, Y, and Z diseases. That's why we ask about family history and healthcare, right? Oh, look, you got a family that's had heart attacks left and right. Well, let's start looking at your heart now before something happens. But we need to do that with every aspect of our life. And it doesn't have to be heavy lifting. I've got friends that run ultra marathons. I hate running. All right, well, I'll go for a walk. Why? Because I know it helps with my cardiovascular health. I love lifting. Other people are like, I'm not going to power lift. That sounds horrible. All right, just make sure you move your body, take care of it. And that resonates into every other aspect of our life, right? We get a little bit of mental fortitude when we push our body. We get endorphins, we get anandamide, this bliss molecule kicking out. So we see all these extra benefits of that lead to us living longer, happier, healthier lives. And it's just those little investments along the way that go add up. Like I said, like investing.
Absolutely. Tom, where can people find you if they want to learn a bit more about you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, yeah. So I point everybody to my clinic's website, which is Charm City Integrative. Charm City is the nickname for Baltimore that isn't the mean one. Uh, but that has all about me if people want to book me for lectures, podcasts, seminars. I do all that. I have links to my book there, thecuppingbook.com will get you there too. That's available on Amazon, every online seller worldwide. Um, but if you have any questions or concerns, you can find me on charmcityintegrative.com, and I'm happy to answer questions when I can. And we just want to be there to promote natural methods of people keeping themselves healthy.
Beautiful. I'll make sure I drop the link in the show notes for people to make it easy for them to find you.
Awesome.
Um, I'm going to bring this to a close, but before I do you have any kind of final messages or thoughts that you want to share with us?
I think healthcare can be a lot simpler than it is, but it requires some ownness from the person that is in the body. So things like meditation, things like daily movement, they're going to go a long way. I think that's it. Small investments now lead to big outcomes later.
Absolutely. Love that. Tom, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show.
Oh, thank you, Aaron. This was great. Thank you.
Take care. There you go.